So welcome to tonight's virtual public scoping meeting for the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project. I'm Nora Madonic. I will be facilitating tonight, and I am going to turn things over to BJ Jones, President and CEO of Battery Park City Authority, to welcome us. BJ?
Thanks, Nora, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting. Before we get started, I wanted to thank everybody for attending and taking part in a project that is vital to the future of Lower Manhattan. You know, it was 9 years ago this month that Hurricane Sandy ravaged New York City. And according to the city's Lower Manhattan Climate Resilience Study, coastal flooding from the storm affected nearly 400 buildings, including over 21,000 homes, and caused significant damage to transportation assets, power supply, open space, and water and sewer infrastructure in Lower Manhattan. Thousands of jobs in the district were also lost due to Hurricane Sandy's direct, indirect, and induced impact. In the years since, in consultation with community, city, and state partners, we have initiated and advanced design and construction work on a number of resiliency infrastructure projects intended to protect Battery Park City from the threats of future storm surge and sea level rise during what are projected to be even greater and more intense climate events. While this evening's meeting is required as part of the environmental review process for the South BPC Resiliency Project, it marks our 12th public presentation focused specifically on this initiative, and our 27th over the past 4 years on our overall resiliency plans, which also include the Northwest BPC Resiliency Project and the Ball Fields and Community Center Resiliency Project, which is now underway. From the outset, we've made robust public engagement a hallmark of our efforts in developing resiliency solutions, and we're happy to continue it here this evening. So whether you're joining us for the first time tonight or joining us again, thank you very much for your interest and your feedback. We look forward to continuing this important work together. And with that, I will turn it back over to Nora. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. And I just want to remind everyone that tonight's meeting will be recorded. So you should be aware of that. Because of the circumstances of COVID-19 and the more recent Delta variant, and BPCA's commitment to protecting public health during this pandemic, BPCA is holding virtual public meetings until further notice to avoid in-person contact. So at this time, we are undertaking a virtual format in lieu of an in-person public scoping meeting. I'm going to go through some of the rules of how we're going to conduct this meeting and talk with you a little bit about how you can comment, and then I'll be turning the meeting over for a brief presentation. And then we will be hearing comments from those who have registered, and I will give you a way to comment if you haven't registered. The presentation will cover the same content that we would have covered were we holding an in-person public scoping meeting, but the comment process is a little bit different. I will be covering the comment process both at the beginning and then at the end of the presentation, so that we can be very clear about how you can share your thoughts and ideas. This is not a meeting, a question and answer kind of meeting. This is a meeting in which we hear what you have to say and record that into the documents that'll be coming out of this. The purpose of a public scoping meeting, what is scoping, is to explain the process for an environmental impact statement, which is also called an EIS, to present the alternatives to be studied in the EIS, to provide the project purpose and need, to share what BPCA is going to be considering during the project, share with you the schedule and the project steps, and hear and collect your input. Scoping meetings essentially start the EIS process, and during this phase, BPCA will be evaluating all of the viable alternatives as well as changes to alternatives that may have previously been presented. The scoping meeting, as I said, is an opportunity to hear and record public input. It is not a time when BPCA will be responding to input or answering questions. We will collect all of the comments and questions tonight, and then during a 15-day comment period that follows this meeting, we will be collecting comments all the way through. They will be responded to in a scoping meeting summary report. You may at some point want to review some of the documents that are related to scoping, and you can do that at the Battery Park City Authority website, which is bpca.ny.gov. So I would ask your patience for process, because sometimes these processes feel like they're taking a very long time. But that is because there is a lot of interaction that has to happen and many prescribed steps that have to be taken. So we encourage you to stay involved all the way through. So let's talk about how to submit comments. And I will go over this again at the end, so don't feel you have to memorize this. However, if you have already registered to comment on the event website where you registered to attend tonight, we will, at the end of this, when we open for comment, we will call on you in the order in which you registered. Each commenter will have 3 minutes to share their comment or their question. Comments and questions will be recorded. They won't be responded to, and then they will be responded to in the final scoping document. If, however, you did not register to comment, but you would like to comment tonight, what I would ask you to do is to enter into the little Q&A box that is on your screen your name, the name of the agency or organization if you're speaking on behalf of one, your email, and your comment. We'll hear as many comments as we can tonight. Comments will be heard in the order in which they are posted in the Q&A. If you prefer not to share your comment tonight, or if something occurs to you after this meeting, all is not lost. You have 15 days. There are 15 days after this meeting during which comments will be received. So that goes up until October 29. To submit your comments after this scoping meeting, you can send them by written comment, by email, or by mail. There is an address right on the screen. We'll be providing that later. You can also record a verbal comment if you prefer to do that via a voicemail. All comments will become part of the scoping record, whether they are shared tonight or during the 15-day period. They will be addressed in the final scoping document. And if you have general questions about this project that may not relate to scoping, but may relate to the project itself, we've given you an email. That's claudia.filomena@bpca.ny.gov. So I think that with that, I am going to turn things over. We have speakers tonight from AECOM, which is the company that is working on this project in support of BPCA. We're going to hear from Chris Tiernan, who is Vice President with AECOM, and we will also hear from Rachel Denker, who is Senior Project Manager. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Christine.
Actually, I'll go next. This is Rachel Denker. I'm Senior Project Manager with AECOM. Thanks everybody for participating tonight and allowing us to introduce you to this important New York City project. Just as a starting place, we'll give you a quick overview of the Battery Park City Resiliency projects, and then we'll focus in our project, our South Battery Park City Resiliency project. In response to the devastating impacts of Superstorm Sandy, Battery Park City has put together the resiliency projects that you see on the screen. This is a blow up of Lower Manhattan, Battery Park City is focused on the western side. You can see on the top left, they start the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project, which you see in orange. A little bit further south is the Battery Park City Ball Fields Resiliency Project. That project is underway as we speak. And if you follow Manhattan further down, further south, the orange line, the Northwest Battery Park Resiliency Project ties into our South Battery Park City Resiliency Project. Our South Battery Park City project represents one of several projects within the overall Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Master Plan. And like I said, it is in response to Superstorm Sandy. The next slide here is the major project segments that we'll be focusing our update on. In the next few slides, we'll focus in these particular areas. This slide is the project area. You can see on the northern side of it, first place is where our flood alignment begins. Our flood alignment will be meeting the design criteria for a 100-year storm event in the year 2050. It has the same criteria as many of the New York City flood resiliency projects in New York City today, specifically on the eastern side, BMCR and the ESCR projects. We will also be getting our FEMA accreditation. So again, just a quick snapshot. First place is the northern portion of our flood alignment and where we start, and then we wrap around the Museum of Jewish Heritage and then follow eastward through Wagner Park and into Pier A Plaza and into the Battery Bikeway. Focusing into our flood alignment itself, we do use a variety of different types of flood measures. As I mentioned before, we do start along first place, and we do that through an exposed flood wall. The north portion of the screen, we then tie into some flip-up deployables as we move to the Museum of Jewish Heritage. We then, sorry, I have a little. We then progress into a glass-topped flood wall around the Museum of Jewish Heritage. As we move through Wagner Park, we do raise the park and we bury the flood wall to maintain those views. The flood alignment then becomes exposed just as we move into Pier A Plaza and connect to some flip-up deployables and then move eastward through Pier A Plaza and connect to an exposed flood wall to a deployable into a bermed flood wall as we move through the Battery. Another key area of our project is the mitigation of interior drainage impacts within our project area. These particular interior drainage improvements include the isolation of the existing underground sewer manholes and connected chambers. What you see on the screen here in green boxes is our solution to this. This is specifically including pressure proofing some interceptor and regulator manholes, as well as installing a regulator underflow gates. This is a rendering of our Wagner Park. Once we complete the project, due to the need to meet the projected DFE for coastal surge, Wagner Park is being significantly elevated and redesigned, which necessitates the replacement of the existing pavilion. Battery Park City has proactively guided us through the process of this redesign, and we have retained as many as possible aspects of the original design intent and site organization for the park. The key features of Wagner Park include an ornamental garden, a central lawn, a stormwater reuse cistern, an infiltration gallery, and performative gardens. We're providing universal access throughout the park. We are also designing to comply with the waterfront edge design guidelines to create a resilient, ecological, and accessible waterfront. Another key aspect of our design has been sustainability, a really key driver for us. We are salvaging existing materials as much as possible. We are introducing native plants wherever we can. We are focusing our site lighting to be reducing glares and to enhance the nighttime views of the harbor and the Statue of Liberty. We've also been selecting our paving colors and materials to increase the park's solar reflectance index, the SRI, which reduces the park's urban heat island contribution. Another just quick aspect here is the pavilion itself that you see on the rendering here. Just want to add a couple of notes on this. We do target an ILFI zero carbon certification. This certification requires us to reduce the operational and embodied carbon. The project is set to exceed the 25% reduction that is required for this certification. We are going to be exceeding that. To allow us to do that, we are introducing a geothermal loop in the Wagner Park. We are utilizing high efficiency materials in our design. It's going to be low carbon insulation and low carbon concrete. We are also have a highly insulated building envelope and are using highly energy efficient lighting fixtures as well as potable water fixtures. We also have a rainwater collection and reuse as part of our pavilion. Another really important focus of our design is to make sure that we are protecting and preserving to the maximum extent possible the open space and beautiful views that you see today. So what you see on the screen is a rendering of our project right underneath our new pavilion and looking out at the beautiful Statue of Liberty and seeing those views that are maintained today. The next area, our flood alignment moves through Pier A Plaza. As we move east, we do have a combination of flip-up deployables and a short segment of an exposed flood wall. This is the lowest elevation of the project area. We do need to elevate it as a result. We've utilized some new materials for seeding and increased the planting. We've also introduced physical site security along the northern edge of Pier A Plaza. And we've also allowed for the tie-in of the Battery Wharf Resiliency project to ours. The next focus of the project has been Pier A Inlet. The design that you see on the screen converts the existing concrete relieving platform in the riprap edge to a terraced condition that improves the habitat opportunity in this area. We have introduced a new observation deck to create a new pedestrian outlook. We have equally increased about 50% more light because we've introduced a meadow grading to the aquatic life below. Similar to several other projects along the waterfront, Battery Park City is also wanting to introduce a living shoreline similar to Pier A 26 and the Brooklyn Bridge Park. Moving further east, the project alignment extends into the bikeway on the north side of the battery. In this particular section, we use a combination of flip-up deployable gates, an exposed flood wall, and it transitions to a buried flood wall beneath a landscape berm here in the battery. And as we move towards State Street, we tie into naturally higher ground. This particular slide is a rendering looking west towards Pier A. And as you can see, we are going to be maintaining the existing circulation and the use of the bikeway, as well as introducing some beautiful landscaped public park edges and introducing beautiful plantings along the way. And with that, I'll let Christine move through the environmental review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to talk about the environmental review process itself, starting with the purpose and need, touching lightly on the alternatives, discussing the framework for analysis, identifying the environmental topics that we have to cover in an EIS, and talking about the overall next steps. The authority as a lead agency has issued a positive declaration, which essentially means that there is the potential for significant impact. And because of that, we have to do an environmental impact statement or an EIS. The EIS that we are preparing is required by the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and it will follow methodologies for mandated by seeker as well as New York City quality process. This is a general outline for the EIS. We start with a detailed project description. We talk about purpose and need. What is the problem that this project is fixing? We'll talk about regulatory requirements. Do we need local, state, federal approvals, permits prior to construction? The alternatives analysis section of the EIS will tell the story of how we got to the proposed action, and it will identify any alternatives that were eliminated from further consideration along the way. The affected environment is essentially a documentation of existing socioeconomic as well as environmental conditions. And of course, we have to address the potential impacts to those resources. If any of those impacts are significant, we will have to identify mitigation measures. And an EIS always includes a section or a chapter on public engagement and public outreach. In terms of purpose and need, the primary purpose for this project is to protect the study area from the 100-year flood event. And that includes increased frequency, increased intensity of those flood events. It includes sea level rise as well as storm surge. Another primary objective, another primary purpose is to protect and preserve as best as we can the Manhattan waterfront, particularly the open space resources of Wagner Park, Pier A Plaza, and the Battery. And thirdly, another primary purpose is to avoid or minimize disruption of below and above ground infrastructure, such as water and sewer infrastructure, drainage, subway, tunnels, utilities, etc. We have also identified various specific objectives. The first one here being to rely primarily on passive flood control measures as opposed to mechanical or deployable flood control technology, which is basically more vulnerable to human and mechanical error. We always want to construct and operate a project in an environmentally responsible manner. To the greatest extent practicable, we'll preserve the waterfront, particularly the view sheds of the harbor and the Statue of Liberty that Rachel talked about a little bit earlier, and utilize cost-effective solutions to maximize our capital investment. Both city and state seeker require that we look at a series of alternatives, and the first is called the no action alternative, which is basically the future condition without our project. And it's essentially a baseline for comparison purposes to compare the action alternatives that are going to be considered in the EIS. You heard Rachel talk about the various segments: First Place, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, Wagner Park, Pier A Plaza, the Battery, and the interior drainage element. So the scoping document will identify the alternatives that were evaluated for each of those segments, and the EIS will thoroughly evaluate those alternatives. In terms of our framework for analysis, 2024 is the build year. That is when the project will be constructed, before the end of 2024. The environmental and socioeconomic disciplines that we're going to be evaluating in the EIS are per city and state seeker requirements. We're going to be looking at long-term operational impacts, which are the permanent impacts once the project is implemented. And we're also going to be looking at short-term construction-related impacts, which are just temporary impacts related to the 2-year construction duration. We'll identify any adverse impacts that are unavoidable. We'll look at the proposed action from the perspective, does it induce growth in the area, residential, retail, commercial growth in the area? And of course, we'll identify any irreversible or irretrievable commitment of resources. These are all the issues, the topics that we're going to be evaluating in the EIS, and the scoping document explains these in more detail and provides methodologies for some of those that have more detailed methodologies required, and the EIS will evaluate these in detail. There are 4 issues that have been screened out from further review, and that is because they do not exceed the threshold that's warranted for further review, and those are socioeconomics, community facilities, solid waste and sanitation, and public health. The scoping document will identify why these were screened out from further review, but you won't see any further review of these issues in the EIS. So where do we go from here? What happens after tonight? Nora mentioned earlier that the public comment period closes on October 29th. In early 2022, the draft environmental impact statement will be out for public review. Shortly after that, also in early 2022, there'll be a public hearing and a public comment period on the DEIS. And then in mid-2022, based on comments received on the DEIS, we will be generating and developing a final environmental impact statement that will be available. So that pretty much lays out the steps after tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to Nora, who's going to moderate our public comment session. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go over one more time how we're going to handle the comment period. We have several people who have registered to comment tonight, and we will be going in the order in which their registration was received. Each of them will have 3 minutes to make their comment or ask their question. Please remember that the scoping meeting that we're having tonight is an opportunity to hear and record public input and public comment. It's not a time when BPCA will be responding to questions or to input as received. Comments and questions that we hear tonight will be collected now and through the 15-day comment period that follows, and will then be responded to in a scoping meeting summary report. If you did not register yet and you would like to comment tonight, I would ask you to use the QA option of the Zoom webinar, and please enter your name, your email, and your address, as well as if you are representing an organization or an agency or anything like that into the Q&A. And assuming that we have time, we will move on to those who've entered in the Q&A in the order in which they are entered. On the screen, you can also see that if you choose not to comment tonight, or if something occurs to you later, there is still a way to comment. A comment period will be open until October 29th, and you can send a written comment either by email or by mail to the address that is on the screen, the email address on the screen. You can also record a verbal comment if you prefer to do so via voicemail at 212-417-2384. All comments, whether they are received tonight or received in the 15-day comment period, will become part of the scoping meeting record, and they will be addressed in the final scoping document. And that document will ultimately be posted on the BPCA website. So we're going to get started. And we have comments. We have 4 registered speakers. Lynn Barat is our first. Looking for Lynn. Lynn, would you raise your hand if you're here? I'm not seeing you in the attendee list. All right, well, we will come back to Lynn if she joins us. The second commenter that we have is Justine Cuccia. Justine, forgive me.
Okay, cool. I am so grateful, first of all, that I was muted this whole time because I couldn't figure out if I was or not. So I've been yelling at everybody to shush. Anyway, sorry, cutting into my 3 minutes. All right, so thank you so much. Here as the chair of the Battery Park City Committee, and my questions are, well, I've got questions more than comments. Can you, or do you have slides that show what the final iteration is of the Wagner Park building? I don't know what else to call it, but the thing that now houses Gugino at Wagner Park. And I just have questions as to what was done and what the final viewing of that is. Because I know that the last time that we were presented with information, the community was commenting and there were some issues. And I definitely defer to Alice Blank and the Environmental Protection Committee in terms of the specifics of everything, because I have just aesthetics, not specifics. But do you have any information? You can't even answer me. Is that the point?
Yeah, we will, that'll be answered in the
Okay,
scoping.
so I guess I would like to know what the final iteration of that is. I'd like to know what the final iteration of the along Battery, in Battery Park, along the edge of Battery Park, maybe that's State Street. I'm not sure what street it is. I can't think of it, but it's the edge of the park. Once you when you move along from Pier A and move farther now it's south and it's going to be east as you go around the tip of the island. At some point, I recall seeing not the beautiful bike path picture that you guys just showed, where it kind of split in two ways, which kind of is what happens now, but I'm assuming there's a change to it. But I recall seeing a wall that was built, and part of it was berm and part of it was wall. And I just don't know where all that is. And maybe I'm just not seeing it. But I'm going to defer my time now to the next person because I just have a lot of questions that maybe don't make any sense. And I thank you for this presentation and thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Justine. The next speaker is Pat Olesko. Pat? I see Pat.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was very glad to see that you were having this meeting today. I hadn't heard anything about it previous to the alert on the Battery Park, information newsletter. So anyhow, I'm an artist and I'm doing a piece as a result of the New York City Artists Corps that is trying to get, the city back up and out and performing. But anyhow, the piece that I'm doing is addressing this exact same thing, which is mitigation of the upcoming floods in the next, 30 years. So I'm just kind of telling you that I'm doing this thing on October 23rd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Marching, I have a parade of with a marching band and bipolar bears and the weeping world and the writhing tides, and we're all marching down along the waterfront to hopefully engage people in comments and questions and remind the public that lives down that we are in a very, very tenuous situation. So it was a piece that was planned long before I heard about this, but anyhow, it is something that I think is helpful to bring awareness to what you're actually going to be doing in the next couple of years. anyhow, it's October 23rd at 3 o'clock along the waterfront, starting at Rockefeller at Chambers and then going down to Staten Island Ferry Building.
Pat, does that complete your statement? I'm going to guess that it does. Thank you, Pat. The fourth speaker is Alice Blank.
Hi, okay, thank you. Sorry, it's a little opaque how to get on here, but I'm on. Okay, basically, we'll look forward to more information. I spoke to Nicholas Squardoni today about the need to be, as you always are, extremely available for community board exchange. I'm Alice Blank, Vice Chair of the Community Board and Head of the Environmental Protection Committee. And thank you, Justine, for those really astute, thoughtful, and helpful questions. We want assurance of continued robust community engagement during the process and providing CB1 with many of the details that you refer to here tonight, which we don't yet have, or if we do, I haven't yet seen them. So forgive me, including which parts of green infrastructure DEP programming is included here? What is the stormwater management future? What it precisely is wedge and isn't, the solar conditions you refer to, the geothermal loop, the high efficiency materials in the building, the living shoreline, I assume all of this, of course, will be available. We'll look forward to a lot of robust exchange going forward, and of course all of this to be made available so that everyone can take a look who was not able to make it tonight. Many thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Blank. With that, I have no further requests for comment. If you would like to put a request in, please do so in the Q&A. And we'll remain open. So if anyone would like to comment, if you just fill that out in the Q&A, we can certainly hear what you have to say. If you prefer, you can enter your comment in writing in the Q&A. I see somebody has. But if you prefer to not comment tonight, the comment period will remain open 15 days from here forward, and it will close on October 29th. You can send your comments by email or by mail. If you send them by email, you're going to send them to the address on the screen, which is claudia.filomena@bpca.ny.gov. Or you can send them by mail, also to Claudia Filomena at Battery Park City Authority, 200 Liberty Street, 24th floor, New York 10281. Or you can record a verbal comment on a voicemail that will take your comment at 212-417-2384. Regardless of whether you enter your comment tonight or you comment up through October 29, all comments will be entered into the scoping meeting record, and they will be addressed in a final scoping document, which will be posted on the BPCA website, which is bpca.ny.gov.
Would you be good enough to clarify, Alice Blank again, apologies, but would you be good enough to clarify precisely what you are asking the public to comment on? Is it a document or documents that are now available on the BPCA website, or is it only on this particular meeting information that's been provided?
Primarily, you're commenting on what you just heard, but the scoping document is posted on the BPCA website, and you can take a look at that there. Christine, would you like to explain more about what's going to be available through them?
Sure. I mean, it's basically, we're looking for your comments on the scoping document because the scoping document has quite a bit of detail on what I discussed. I just summarized really briefly. But you can really get into a little more detail if you look at the scoping document. And, basically the whole point of this scoping process is to identify any issues that need to be addressed in the EIS. So if there's something you feel that's not covered in that scoping document, that's what we need to hear. That makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. I just want to make sure the public is aware of that they will be required and should certainly review this document on your website in order to provide helpful comments to you.
Yep.
If I'm understanding that correctly. Thanks.
Thanks.
So Bob Schenk would like to make a comment. Bob, would you please enter, before you do, could you please enter your email? And if you are representing an organization or not, that's fine. But if you would enter that into the Q&A, I can then recognize you. Okay, Bob Schneck would like to make a comment.
Am I speaking?
You are.
I'm heard. Okay, thank you. So I am a resident of Battery Park City. I've been here since '88 at 200 Rector Place, and I'm also a member of Community Board 1 and the Environmental Protection Committee. But these are just my own questions. They're not aligned with any of that. The first one, I've been involved with resiliency questions for a while. And so these are just questions. Does the standard chosen for the pavilion, does the ecological standard chosen for the pavilion meet the requirements of the New York State Energy Conservation Code and the New York City Energy Conservation Code? I don't remember seeing it listed there as an alternative path to being accepted by the state of New York or the city of New York, but you know the status and I don't. The next one is, by comparison, as is generally known, every flight on Earth needs to file a flight plan detailing the specifics of the flight, including the times, departure and arrival, aircraft weather, etc. The Army Corps of Engineers is the only institution with the vision scale and geological perspective to be able to evaluate the environmental and engineering issues and many others that are involved with these projects. So it seemed very important to me that the HATS project, which has been going on for some time and got this I suppose during the Trump administration, that's the only thing that actually looks simultaneously at Battery Park City and the coast of Brooklyn, and looks simultaneously at Staten Island and also Hoboken and New Jersey City, and goes all the way up to Ossining. So it's important that that be part of this. And I haven't seen much energy spent on really trying to get that project moving again and to integrate it. That seems important to me. The next one is, how are borders between projects handled, where the intersections between one project and institution and another project come together? One might be about storm surge and the other one might be about sea level rise. And I was wondering how the different standards that the different projects are looking at and the different architectural and engineering models kind of come together. The next one is there going to be a consolidated comprehensive project budget for this that can be available to the public, that not only looks at the stage of the project in Southern Battery Park, but also looks at a wider vision of the projects north of Battery Park, south of Battery Park, and if possible, what kind of regional money is being expended. And then I've been very interested in the stormwater plans and just wonder if as part of your reporting, you can report on where the control building is going to be built along West Street and how that's going to be integrated into the aesthetics and into the practical matter of managing the stormwater in Battery Park City. I saw a small map, but it was very difficult to interpret, and it looked like the southernmost southernmost control house looked like it got shifted off of the Esplanade or the Grand Walk along West Street, but I don't know. So I just would like to see and find out where the stormwater plans are and get some elevations of how they're worked out to date. So those are my questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I do notice that there is someone with a hand up, but I can respond to that. So hang on, I'm gonna stop the video. If you would like to comment, I'm just going to say to attendee because there's no name. But if you would like to comment, please put your name and your email and address into the Q&A, and I'd be happy to call on you. Thank you. Great. So we're going to hear from Tammy Meltzer. Tammy? She is listed as attendee for the person who is opening her.
Thank you very much for unmuting me. Would you mind putting up the streetscape slide?
You elaborate on what streets, or maybe just yell when you see it.
Nope, the one that would be Battery Place streetscape kind of a thing. Oh,
This is the Battery.
so this kind of goes to my representation and issues that I'm struggling with here that have not been studied. You're showing the bike path here. Now please show the slide by Pier A. I don't see any bikes on that path, although that is the bike way, which is a secondary issue, because as you come through from the Battery, through Pier A and into Wagner, bicyclists in general do not take that right turn up onto the Greenway. Delivering people, yes. People just going north for very far ways, yes. But tourism does not take that turn, nor do most of the locals. There has not been a robust engagement on how to mitigate the impacts of pedestrian and bicycles at the points on the intersection of Battery Place and Little West Street, nor across all of Battery Place as you're looking north, and how it intersects with the park. Ignoring that is not going to make it go away, and we need to plan for it. That is a major impact that has not had a solid solution that I've seen thus far. And even not showing any streetscape photos along Battery Place reinforces my concerns on that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the plans that you've looked at do not take into account real world access in terms of other than people accessing the park, but what the bus traffic looks like, as well as the NYPD traffic along Battery Place and the needs of the hotel across the street, as well as the public transit. My concern is by forcing the 2 pinch points that also for pedestrian access to the site also happens to be at the bus locations, is also at the pinch points of the cross sections of how the students cross back and forth. We are at a point right now that there is a very dangerous intersection at First Place. And by funneling and forcing traffic back to First or at Little West, you're actually exacerbating the issues. So I don't know if you have studied that, if there's been a separate engineering and environmental impact on those, but I'd like to request that those are looked at and done before any shovels go into the ground.
Ms. Meltzer, you have a minute left if you'd like to add anything.
I saw somebody noted in the chat about what kind of construction and environmental mitigation studies have been done on both the museum and the school, especially considering the school has an outdoor yard and the school widely uses First Place. Has that been studied at all? And then to ensure that there is access of all kinds to Battery Park from the north side, even during construction, so people can access down to the ferries and into the park at reasonable multiple access points that are safeguarded for both pedestrian and bicycle safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Milson. I do not see anyone else looking to comment. So again, if you would like to comment, just go into the Q&A and enter your name, your email, your address. I'd be happy to recognize you in the order in which you enter. If you prefer to comment after tonight, please follow the instructions on your screen, and comments will be welcome until October 29. All comments received tonight and through October 29 will become part of the scoping meeting record and will be addressed in the final scoping document. I can see some people are leaving for other things and want to be sure that we thank them for participating in tonight's scoping meeting. We will remain live for a while. So if you change your mind and decide that you want to comment, you certainly can.
I don't know if this is still open for more questions. Is it Renee or Nora? I see two names here, but again, Alice Blank from Community Board 1. Could you let us know how many people have attended tonight's meeting? More or less at this point?
Oh, that's another question.
I think, Nora, I saw at one point 41 attendees at the highest level. I think I saw that.
We were in the neighborhood of that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned to Nick Spordone, I would recommend that going forward, if we can try to coordinate these meetings a little bit more closely with the Environmental Protection Committee meetings at Community Board 1, that might be helpful to even have more participation, as we often do get a little bit more, for whatever reason, more involvement. So just a thought. I think there were a lot of people who couldn't make it tonight.
Well, thank you for that. And I hope you will let them know that there is a comment period is open for another 15 days.
We certainly will.
Thank you.
Well, that I have, we have this silent time. I'll ask another question. Alice Blank here again. Sorry, I'm just sort of finding things as we go. But I'm very interested, I think many in the community are very interested in the reasonable alternatives to the proposed action. I think section 4.4 and such. Am I to understand that these actions have not yet been revealed in this draft, right? This will be coming somehow in the next, I always thought that some of that was revealed earlier, but could you just clarify that that will be coming in the next phase of this EIS review?
Yeah, Alice, I can pretty simply just respond that the scoping document has an alternative section, and it does identify the alternatives that we are going to be evaluating for each of those project segments. But the actual evaluation and the analysis of those alternatives, you will not see until the DEIS comes out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you describe, while we're here with this time, which is very precious to all of us, how this kind of dovetails, if at all, with the legislation on stormwater management? In other words, is everything here in the environmental impact, of course, legal, but is there sort of an understanding of green infrastructure and stormwater management updates in all of this? In other words, is this addressed specifically in terms of the EIS?
I guess, Alice, what I can say to that is that we're going to be designing this in accordance with all regulations and requirements. And we're going to be going through a permitting process with the agencies. So, I mean, I can't really get more detail than that at the moment.
Thanks. I think that was something that we had great concern about early on. And so we'll definitely, I know as the community, want to hear more about the drainage aspect of this and all. Okay, thanks.
Christine, I also have had a couple of questions. Will the images, the drawings that you showed here tonight be on the website as well?
They're all the graphics that we showed tonight are all in the scoping document.
Thank you.
Yep.
Could you indicate who prepared this, the DEIS for the public scoping? I'm sure it's here somewhere, but if you don't mind.
I'm sorry, Alice, could you repeat your question?
I was curious who prepared the draft scoping document on behalf of the Battery Park City Authority.
That would be AECom.
Thanks.
And the document is available. I have it open now on the website.
I feel it's a little one-on-one. I guess I'm still entitled to ask more questions, so I will, again, on behalf of CB1. Could you just explain what the near surface isolation elements are? That are indicated on figure 1.1 in the draft scoping document?
I think we're going to have to leave that for a post-scoping comment meeting. And I believe that we're going to, if there are no further comments for tonight, we're going to close this meeting at 7:15. So we have a couple minutes left.
Can you tell us when this post meeting will take place, what date that will be, and where that will happen? And could we have it at Community Board 1?
That was a lot of questions. Christine, can you go back to the schedule?
Sure.
I don't know.
Alice, I'm not sure. Post meeting, what are you referring to?
You just referred, I thought it was just referred to that the comment that there will be a meeting, that the question I asked about the near surface isolation elements would be answered at the next meeting.
In the scope, in the document.
Yeah, it's further described in the scoping document.
I guess the question then would be, the next meeting about the EIS would be in early 2022. Is that the?
Yeah, that would be the actual formal public hearing that we would have once the DEIS is out and available for public review.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Christine, if you could go to our thank you slide, I think we're going to close.
Okay.
thank you everyone for participating tonight. And again, if you wish to make comments after tonight, comments are accepted up until October 29th. You can do so on via email, do so via mail, do so via telephone. We thank you very much for spending the time with us tonight and sharing your thoughts. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
all.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.